Okay, you just tell me when I'm ready to start, Kerwin. Ready? Okay. All right, first things first, appreciate all you guys for being out here today and covering us in this game. Obviously, that wasn't the result that we wanted, but I really want to lead with how proud I am of this team. With all the adversity that we dealt with as a team, top to bottom, starting at the beginning of this week, I'm very, very proud of how we responded. And I think we did a lot of really good things on both sides of the ball. Obviously, defense came through with a huge turnover when we needed it from our guy right here. And offensively with Kellen and the rest of, the whole offense, I thought we did, good things at a lot of times in the game of moving the ball in the run and the pass. So overall, I think there's a lot of positive things to build on. Obviously, we want a different result, but, we're going to go back to work. And I have no doubt in this team that we're ready to move on to next week and get the ball rolling. Questions, if you guys have them, for whoever.
Hi, Peyton Pardee. This is Michael Bell. Congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
What kind of inspiration have you taken from your grandfather in coaching and leading the offense today?
My grandfather's kind of my hero. I tell everybody that asks, he's kind of he was a big reason in my inspiration to get into coaching. I learned a lot about life and football from him and my dad, because my dad had the opportunity to play for him in college. And for me, it was, a lot of when you get and put in a situation like this, you kind of have to default, trust who you are and not change up and not try to be anything different. And so that's one of the things that I learned not only from Coach Wade, who's a man that, that I seriously look up to in this game, but from my grandfather. And that was kind of my messaging this week was, I'm a very consistent person, or I try to be. And I'm going to give everything that I have to these players, not just on offense, on the whole team. And, I think defensively they know that from my time as a special teams coordinator that, the game of football, in my opinion, is not about me and it's not about the coaches. It's about these players. And we're here to help them. And so that's, my messaging this week, and that's what it will be continuing moving forward.
Mike Mueller, BCP Plus. It seems like each week you guys are getting a little bit closer to finding that victory. And I was just wondering, whoever wants to take this, what do you think is like the one area where you still feel like you need to improve just a little bit more to get you guys over that hump?
I'll go on this one. I think on the offensive end, I felt like we came out really sharp. We converted on third downs. I think we only punted one time in the first half, but kicking those 3 field goals instead of at least one, we would love to have all touchdowns. Is always huge in the game, especially when you go up early. I thought we did some good things in the second half, some QB runs, some big third down conversions. And at the end of the day, gave our special teams a chance to win games. We hit a game winner in practice, and we expect him to continue to hit game winners for us, or at least giving us a chance at overtime. So, we got all the trust in D and the whole special teams unit, and both offense and defense is going to continue to grow.
And then, excuse me. But I see more on the defense side. This is a semi-new group, and we're just trying to get the details together, man. Because on defense, bro, you gotta on defense, one player can't mess up. On offense, one player can make the ball, make something magic happen, and then go for 70 yards. But on defense, if we're not all on the same page, then stuff is gonna hit, stuff is gonna get open, stuff like that. So that's the only thing we're trying to clean up over there.
And Coach, speaking of things to clean up, 11 penalties today for 103 yards. How did that kind of play an impact in the final result in this game?
I think, looking at the penalties top to bottom, really there was one that, I will take, and that was the intentional delay of game that we took. So I'm not sure if that's counted on the stat sheet, but, I think overall, top to bottom, we've got to eliminate penalties, because a couple of those came on explosive plays, like particularly the one that I think of was on the play where we ran counter and ended up getting a penalty after we gained, it was at least a first down, if not more. And the thing I do know about this team is we will correct that. And so that to me just comes back to emphasizing the details, depending on what the penalty was. But overall, top to bottom, as a team, you can't have 11 or 10 in my mind, knowing one of those was an intentional delay of game to try to back us up. You can't have 10 penalties. And so that's something, as always, it'll be a point of emphasis, and we will get that cleaned up this week.
This game right now, it feels very similar to when Arlington lost here last year and they were 0-6, but they were playing pretty good football. it's easy to become hopeless after you open up 0-3. Right now, after on the eye test, that was a very good game by San Antonio. How much hope do you have for the rest of the season?
We got a lot of hope. I felt like we had a really good week of practice, and it was extremely chaotic. When a piece leaves and there's kind of no game plan, and a lot of guys have to step up and create a game plan, and a lot of detail shifting and additional plays. And so I think our whole offensive unit, Peyton, Marv, Jesse, Cody, adding Cody this week, it was huge. And for us to be able to do what we do, to come out today and like I said, only punting once in the first down, in the first half, I think was amazing. But I think it's something we can definitely build on. Obviously, we want wins, and we're definitely going to get the wins. But we just got to continue to fight and continue to build.
Yeah.
If I could bug you for one more, Kellen.
Yeah.
Michigan's pass rush, we're without Breland today for Michigan. Could you describe, still a lot of good rushers there, could you describe your comfort level in the pocket?
I thought I felt really, really well in the pocket. I think I moved around. I think their D-line was really solid, really good. And, I played with Kenny Willekes in Minnesota, so me and him were close. But, a lot of those pieces are really good players, and, it's a good team. And, it's definitely something to build on.
I'd like to also kind of circle back to your first question and just, throw my 2 cents in there, not to belabor the point. But the one thing that I will say, just coming out of this locker room right now, we just met with the team, is this team is nowhere. We are not about to fold. There is a lot of fight left in this team. And I'm going to say this, obviously, like we talked about, it certainly wasn't the outcome that we want. But I promise you right now, this team is going to keep fighting. And we're, in my opinion, we're really, really close to, going over that hill, so to speak. And obviously, you can see a noticeable difference in our, team style of play this week from the previous two. So, I have myself, Coach Wade, the entire coaching staff. We have exactly what we need in this locker room. And this is part of, the game of football and the game of life, is overcoming some adversity. And when things don't go your way, is you've got to learn how to turn the page, improve what you need to. But we still have the whole season ahead of us, especially with a big challenge upcoming this week. But this team has a lot of fight, and I promise you, we're going to be better next week.
One more for Coach. Because Michigan plays both Danny Etling and Bryce Perkins each game so far. How did that affect your game plan coming into this one?
I know whenever you have a quarterback that can run, that certainly stresses you as a defense. But I'm really proud of our defensive staff. In some ways, you kind of have to have a game plan for each of those players. But one thing that I was really proud of with, our defensive staff and the defensive players is they handled, kind of toggling those two worlds really, really well from a communication standpoint. And, obviously the execution wasn't perfect, but, it really never is. And so, I think it's definitely makes it a little more of a challenge to prepare for, but I think our staff handled it well overall.
We're going to go to Zoom. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
All right, Coach, so taking over the offensive play calling for the first time today, how did you want the offense to look different, and how did you feel like that translated to the field?
I can now speak a little more freely about this because you guys saw the game, but, I told our guys, what I envision our offensive brand of football being moving forward is we're going to play good team football. And I'm going to say this right now. We have 3 very good, dynamic running backs, and in my opinion, we have the best offensive line in the league. And that's just my opinion. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased. And so, obviously there was a bigger emphasis in getting the ball spread around to all of our really, really talented players, not only the running backs, but our quarterback's very talented. We have a great receiver core. And so what I wanted to see from these guys is better energy, more physicality. We wanted to establish a run game early, and then allow our quarterback and our skilled playmakers to get the ball in their hands as well. And so I thought we did a lot of good things in those areas. Obviously, we have some things that we can build on. But overall, my big emphasis is we have a very, very talented offensive, unit, whether it be O-line, receivers, tight ends. A lot of people forget about those. We do have 2, and our running backs. And so I think, the big emphasis is giving those guys an opportunity to make plays and utilize their skill set.
And how is Coach Wade doing? Can you give us any kind of an update on his status and why he wasn't out there today?
Coach Wade's doing okay. He's doing great. Just, a little bit of a general flu going around. I had it myself last week, so, Coach Wade's doing great.
And then, Jordan, I wanted to ask you about on the defensive end. It seemed like the first few drives they couldn't get much going, and then they started to have some success. Was there something that changed?
No, it just goes back to my statement earlier, man. We just got to everybody on the defensive side has to do their job, and it comes down to 11 people doing their jobs and making the play when it comes down to it. We got a couple missed tackles and stuff. Like, we're very hard on defense, man. So. Just honestly, bro, if we do our job, bro, they couldn't move the ball. They should never had. I think they got 314 yards. That's BS. So, man, we got to stop that, bro. So, honestly, that's what the defense has to step up, keep them under 250 yards, and win the ball game, man.
Anything else, Kurt?
No, I'm good. Thank you, guys.
That's funny.
Yeah, thank you. I have one for Coach Payton. Coach, what was your speech to the team in the locker room? It was a hard moment, no, with this loss, or do you need to look forward?
You know, I told our guys, you know, specifically in the pregame and last night going into this game is I'm a big believer in, you know, God puts each and every one of us in situations for very, very specific reasons. And so I reminded them, you know, we have everything that we need roster-wise in this football team. We don't need anything else. We just need to continue coming together and playing as a team. And no matter what happens, right, wrong, or indifferent, we're going to stay together because this is a really, really close group. And, you know, I know the word family's thrown around there a lot, but, you know, I have a very positive outlook after coming out of that locker room, obviously after a really tough loss. But, I just emphasized to them, God put us in a position, in this exact position offensively with our, you know, changes and things of that nature, but even at a team outlook is we're put in this position for a very specific reason. So we need to, you know, learn from it and continue to come back ready to work next week.
Okay, perfect. I'm from Mexico City, Coach. I want to ask you about, you are the grandson of the coach, Jack Pardee?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much to be clear here in Mexico. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
All right. I think we're good, guys.
I appreciate y'all.
Thanks.
Thank y'all.